Hi, I'm Emma's aka on Zack and Wings, and I really enjoy making little vignettes and dioramas for my war dollies, so my Warhammer, Fallout and other type of miniatures. Vignettes can be a really cool way to make small dioramas so you're not using up as much space, and you can display the miniatures on them as like more of a diorama, or just have them as like a backdrop so you can take photographs with them, or you can just display your miniatures. This is another one I'm working on at the moment. It's like a trench type of base. However, I'm not going to be addressing these in this video. I wanted to look at making more of a shadow box vignette diorama. You might have heard of the miniature artist Roman Lepat. If you haven't, I recommend looking him up. Anyway, he makes a lot of these really elaborate dioramas, usually in frames. And there is another artist called Nikki Grillet who used to be an artist for Games Workshop. They make a lot of these dioramas within little boxes and tins. It's worth looking up their artwork. Obviously, this type of diorama vignette is not unique to Warhammer and Wargaming miniatures. These have been around for a long time and other people make them with different displays. A lot of places sell these in the UK, like the Works and the Range, and I'm assuming whatever country you're from will have an equivalent. They're called deep frame boxes or shadow boxes, and you can also get ones which are more like a book. Obviously, you're not limited by things that you can buy. You can upcycle and reuse tins and other boxes which you have. And there are some 3D printable ones. I'll put in the link in the description below, which are deeper frames in the style of like Roman Lepat's. I've already been collecting a few of these. These are just some examples. The one on the right is more like a box, like the Nikki Grillet style, and I'll be using this as an example in the video, so I'll be working on that. I got the one on the right from the Works, and it flips open. I've already started it, so I might as well finish it off. So in terms of the materials you could use for this type of diorama, it's whatever you want to, but just to give you some ideas, you can get carving foam. Cork sheets are also really cool. You can buy cheaper versions of these which are off-branded, and you can get like these heat-proof mats which are made out of a similar material. I've started working with this stuff recently called plastic card, which is like a styrene type material, and this comes in different shapes and sizes, and you can get them in piping as well. This pink XPS foam or insulation foam can be great as well for dioramas. You can get it pretty cheap. You can also just use whatever Warhammer or other terrain which you have. Tabletop Combat have some really nice stuff. And obviously if you have access to a 3D printer, this can really help you to create some interesting terrain pieces to put inside the diorama. Get some inspiration online, have a look at some vignettes and dioramas and shadow boxes. Scale modelers, the traditional ones, tend to have some really good vignettes. These rollers from Green Stuff World are really helpful. There's some 3D printed versions of these out there as well. For my vignette, I will be using this Green Stuff World sci-fi mold. I really like this. I've used it quite a few times. I really recommend looking up the Green Stuff World molds. There's loads of different ones for different types of genres, sci-fi, fantasy, etc. And you use this stuff with acrylic resin, which you mix with water. So I'm just going to show you the process of this. So I've mixed some of the powder in with some water, and I'm just pouring it over the top. This stuff sets quite quickly actually, and it's done in like a couple hours, but you might want to leave it overnight just so it's hardened fully, and you've got some like really good stuff for making like terrain and dioramas with. This is what the pieces look like when they're dried. You get a lot of different interesting like sci-fi textures and things like that. So back to the box, so I fitted in some of those pieces. I've also made some elevated parts to make it more 3D, and I can put some models inside of it. So I've padded out the rest of the model here with some clay. The dry clay can be pretty useful, but it can be brittle. You can also use like 2-part epoxy sculpt. This can be a bit more expensive, and if you're in the UK, Milliput is quite a cheaper alternative. You can also just use your standard green stuff and whatever else materials you want to in that realm. I'm going to be using the Green Stuff World tentacle roller here. I've used this quite a lot and I find it super handy. I really need to clean it. I'm going to be using this just with that air drying clay since I already have it out. And what you do is roll it into a sausage shape. Yes, my hands are filthy. And what I want to do is just roll out some clean ones first without any texture on them, and then I'm going to create some with some texture. So once I've rolled it out into a thinner sausage shape, I flip it over. One side is plain and then the other side will have the texture on it. These are super handy. As you can see, it's made like a rubber piping type of texture on it. So I made quite a few different versions of these pipes, and then I stuck it all around the diorama. You might not be able to see it too well as it's quite a dark grey clay colour, but I've stuck them all around, and I'm going to wait for them to dry and just hold them in place with some super glue. So off camera, I primed the entire thing in black spray paint, and I'm going to be painting this up with the dark art paint from Too Thin Coats. They sent me a copy of these. I played around with them already. They are like grimdark paints, similar in the style to the Army Painter's John Blanche range. So the first colours I used were Noir Brown and Brown Ink over the top of it, which is like wash, and it's that it's really dark brown, grimdarky colour. So after that, I wanted to add some highlights and some different rust colours and textures. So I've got Archon Orange here. So I'm dry brushing this over the top. I really like this range of paints. You might already know I personally really like post-apocalyptic and gritty and dark sci-fi type of stuff, so this paint set's great for me. And next up I've got the Ironclad Silver. I really like the metallics from Too Thin Coats, they cover really nicely. I do own other Too Thin Coats paints, and it's a range I've gradually been using more and more of. So next up I'm using this tobacco ink. One of the things I really like about Too Thin Coats is they have like glazes and ink washes, and they're really highly saturated as well. And you do need to thin them down a bit because they are quite intense. I thought this yellow would add a nice contrast to the rest of the colours. And lastly, I'm using Verdigris, which is a technical paint from Too Thin Coats. This is really nice as it's like a thin ink type of wash. I did thin it down a bit though. And I'm going to leave it there, and I think it looks pretty cool for what I've decided to do. I kept this one a bit more minimalistic. It would be cool to do one that was a bit more 3D with more layers to it, but that's something I can do in the future. And I can also display miniatures on this. I've not decided whether to just have it as a display box on a wall or to incorporate miniatures actually into the diorama. I think this would be cool for like something like Necromunda. So I hope this has given you some inspiration and ideas for making your own like shadow boxes and grillet boxes. I'm on other social media platforms, etc. So check those links in the description below. As always, thank you for watching. Remember to enjoy your hobbies for yourself. At the end of the day, they're just war dollies, and I'll catch you in the next one.